Yeah, there's more power outlets in the direct restrictions while you're living
Okay, you guys all see that?
Yeah.
All right, great. So I vaguely remember meeting some of you last time I was here in September, but I'm Stephanie. I will be marrying him next year. So just a brief overview. I have been on my deaconess internship in Puerto Rico. The first 5 months was in the Dominican Republic in Santiago, learning Spanish because I had gone to college, went and took Chinese, and they're like, "How does Puerto Rico sound?" And I was like, "Cool. Spanish is a lot easier to learn than Chinese." Just throwing that out there. But I arrived in Puerto Rico in January, shortly after the earthquakes hit. This is a building that is about 3 blocks away from our church in Ponce. So there was, I think you can see it. If not, I'll send you guys the actual pictures. On January 6th and January 7th, there was 3 6.0s that hit Puerto Rico on the south end of the island, which is where I live. I was not there yet. I got there 5 days after. And so the team was rushing around trying to formulate our process of providing disaster relief because we were not expecting it. They had gotten about 500 smaller, tinier earthquakes between Christmas and that time, but they're like, it's not going to be big. There's the biggest one's going to be like a 4.5. Well, that didn't happen. The 6.0s hit and caused a lot of damage in Ponce, in Guayanilla, in Guanica, and Yauco. So Yauco, about 20 miles off the coast, is where the big ones hit. If you've ever seen a picture in Puerto Rico of a bridge that went over the water and created like a circle with the water and the thing, that is no longer there. It crashed in the earthquakes. So this is what I came to when I arrived on the island, and immediately started helping them pack relief bags. So I arrived on a Thursday afternoon at like 5 o'clock. They were cooking supper for the team that was there because we had regional staff from the Latin America, Caribbean region who would come to help us with the immediate efforts. By that time that I got there, we had found out that there were 4 refugios, or refugee centers as they call them. One was in a school that they had deemed safe to have people in. It was an open air school, but it was one that they could put people in classrooms and set up cots and everything. There was one next to La Letras, which is the letters. If you come into Ponce on the highway, you see Ponce spelt out. So people had set up a camp there. And then there was also one, it was next to the library in Ponce. The one we went to the most was the school one because my teammates, Deaconess Crystal and Pastor James, had built a relationship with an elderly tower, as they called it. It's basically assisted living for older Puerto Ricans. And they had been doing Bible studies starting in like September of that year. And it goes to show you that God works and provides well before we can think of. They didn't know the tower existed, but they were setting up and they had just bought, they had just found the new location for our churches. And this older gentleman had come in looking for Pastor Schuler. Pastor Schuler used to be the pastor in Ponce like 3 years ago. He had left, accepted a call for California. And so he wasn't there anymore. But he came in, he was like, I know your name, like Iglesia Luterana Fuente de Vida, or Fountain of Life Lutheran Church. He was like, I knew Pastor Schuler. So they started talking. And he had asked Pastor James and Deaconess Crystal to go to the elderly tower and like do a Bible study or to visit him. And they're like, well, let's start with a visit. But little did they know when they walked in, he had gathered like 40 people from the tower into this tiny little room And they whipped up a Bible study. I think it was on Psalms in like 5 minutes. They're like, okay, let's do this. So then they continued doing that, and they had their last Bible study time right before Christmas. And that was the last time they were able to meet until a week ago. Some of the elderly are no longer there because the building that they were living in was condemned. It's not safe to be in anymore. So we assisted them in getting their stuff out. They had like 2 days to get it out before the city was going to tear the building down. So some of them moved to San Juan because that's where they were placed, and others moved to other facilities in Ponce, so we're still able to connect with them. But this is when we were packing relief bags, so we went to La Letras and the Refugio at the school. In these bags were different things. We had little Vienna sausages and beans and garbage bags, toilet paper, some water bottles, and a few other small little things. And then our cards for our different churches, as well as, what's it called in English? God's comfort in times of trouble. And so we put one of those in each of the bags and we handed them out, as well as we set up coffee. Puerto Ricans love their coffee. They make really good coffee. Maybe next time I come here, I'll bring Puerto Rican coffee. It was not at the forefront of my mind this time. But we did that, and then we talked and we worked with, what's it called? The government agency that comes in. Does disaster. FEMA, that's what it was. I was like, I know there's an acronym. We worked with FEMA we provided the spiritual care for the earthquake victims. And so we developed a really close relationship with the mayor of the city, as well as with the police force and other government agencies, so that we could provide the spiritual care for the people who had gone through what they went through. And we worked closely with the National Guard as well. So this is one of those times we had gone to La Letra, and Deaconess Crystal and I, we brought visual faith elements. So it was printed, drawn Bible verses that looked like stained glass, but you could color in the stained glass part. And so we did that. We brought that as kind of like let's focus on something else instead of what just happened. Let's look at God's word through a visual aspect. And so we did that while the pastors went around and prayed with each of the families that were at these refugios. And then we did a short Matin service at the different refugios. We had gotten approval to do that. We had a traveling speaker that was about this big that did not need to be plugged in, and a microphone that plugged into the speaker, and a guitar. And that's how we did Matins.
So these people have never seen a Matin service before, I presume.
Most of them had not. One person did. So we passed out little sheets of the Matin service for them to follow along, as well as we're in the Latin America Caribbean region is in the process of writing a hymn book. We don't have a hymnal. So like we have the LSB here. We don't have that in the Latin America Caribbean region. It's in the process of being approved. It just got approved by, I think, the LCMS, so we can use it in our Hispanic churches here as well. But I think, if I remember correctly, it's supposed to be like printed sometime next year. So hopefully within the next year, we'll have a hymnal, because we've been using tester hymnals. So it's like 20 hymns and like the services in the front, but they're just paper. But this is Olga. She is my best friend from the Refugio. We met because I was standing at the coffee. It was my first day there, still learning Spanish. So not fluent at this point. But she's super gracious. She comes up and, excuse me, you guys are from the church, right? I'm like, yeah, we're from the church. She's like, okay, well, first off, can I have some coffee? And I was like, yeah, go for it. So she grabs some coffee and she's like, well, I've seen these other people walk around with these like books. I think they're Bibles. And I'm like, yeah, the blue ones. And she's like, yeah. Can I have one? I was like, let me find one for you, because I had just gotten there. I didn't know if we had them there that day or where they were. So it's like, let me find you. What room are you staying in? She told me where she was staying. She's like, well, I'm gonna go back and do that. If you find it, let me know. And so like I called my teammates. I was like, hey, do we have Bibles? And my teammate, Deaconess Crystal, was like, yeah, they're in the trunk. I'm on my way now, because she had gone and gotten the Bibles, because she's like, oh no, we forgot them. So she went back to their house, grabbed some, and was on her way back with them in her trunk. So she was like, yeah, I'll be there in like 10 minutes. So like I just continued to hand out coffee, because I was good at doing that while still learning Spanish. And the pastors were praying with the people around the coffee place. My Deaconess Crystal gets there. She hands me the Bible. I was like, I'm going to go find this lady. She was not in the room she told me she would be in. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to search for the heart blanket, because I will recognize that. And I remembered her name was Olga. And I was like, okay, have you guys seen Olga? Finally, I found her. And our photographer for the region happened to capture the moment. We were talking and we were praying, and she was telling me, so we prayed, we talked, gave her a Bible, and then she was like, how long have you lived in Puerto Rico? I was like, a day? And she's like, oh, well, I need to teach you some Puerto Rico sayings. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but they were pretty funny. But we have continued to do visits with her and her son, Carlos, since then. Most of them since March, because of the virus, is on the phone, but we still talk with them. We've also waved at them from their balcony and from our car, because they enjoy like at least seeing us. But we went and we've spent like 3 hours at a time visiting with them and answering questions. Olga had been Catholic before, but hadn't been to church for about 10 years. And she had seen them doing some stuff previously. They had done some Vesper services and a few things before I got there. And so she's like, these people keep coming back. They're not like the other churches that like come really quick, set up, and then leave without talking to anybody or saying anything. Like, you guys keep coming back. That was the biggest thing that we took away, was the people noticed that we were coming back, and we weren't just there to like set up really quick, do our thing, and then leave. We were there to talk with them, to pray with them, and to care for them spiritually.
So Stephanie, is the Dominican religious country? I mean, do they?
Puerto Rico, you mean?
I mean, I'm sorry, Puerto Rico. Yes. Are they a religious country? I mean, do they have?
They're very close to what America is.
Okay.
They have religion, and they have different denominations of religion. There is Mormons. I live like 2 blocks from a Mormon church. And they have other churches like we do here. They have, I don't think there's ELCA anymore. They used to have them there, but they've since pulled. There's Pentecostal, Presbyterian, Baptist. So there are other churches. Catholic, yep. So it's very similar to how it is here. The only difference is there are some people who have incorporated the animistic part, which is like Eastern religions, where you focus on the spiritual realm as well. So that's the big thing that we're fighting with there, is making sure that they understand the correct biblical way of this versus what they're learning from other sources. But good question. Other questions? Before I continue? This is just a picture of all the relief bags. This was Pastor James and Deaconess Crystal's garage. It became our kind of base for the first 3 weeks I was there. It was our sanctuary for a few Sundays. We'd have to clear all of the stuff we had put out there during the week, and set up a table and with a sheet and make it our altar and have chairs, because our buildings had been damaged in the earthquake. We had bought 2 buildings and like an area that could be used for a parking lot in November. And they used it for a solid 4 weeks before the earthquakes hit, and it was deemed unsafe for us to be there for the time being. We actually just last week started renovations, and because insurance finally gave us the approval to, because everybody knows insurance and how long that takes. And so we finally got approval to start doing that, and we're in a temporary location right now, which has presented its own challenges, which I'll get to in a second. This was in Yauco, so this is another one of those refugee camps. We took our stuff to go. We have coffee and flyers, and we had a lot of bags. They are no longer there. This was after we handed them out. One thing we have is both churches, Principado de Paz and Fuente de Vida, have a card house attached to them, which is Casa de Amparo y Respuesta a Desastre, which is the House of Refuge and Disaster Relief in Spanish, or in English of Spanish. And it was created to provide disaster relief as well as other opportunities for things. And so we each have red card shirts, which is a little heart with a hand and a cross. So myself and Deaconess Crystal wore the red shirts, and the pastor wore their collars, so we were noticeable as we're from the same place. You can come talk to us.
Said the pastors wore their collars. That's good.
Yep.
Because then they're identifiable.
Yep. And they were like, people were walking up to them right away. Some of them called them father because Catholic, but yeah, no, they were able to like go and talk with them. And when we were at the refugios, we had to wear these lovely yellow things. They just said humanitarian ayuda, which means humanitarian help. And this is the picture of me praying with one of the people who were at the refugio. This is actually one of the ladies who was a part of the Bible study at the elderly center that had been started earlier that fall.
When you pray with them, do you pray in English or Spanish?
Spanish.
Even your first day?
Yeah. It was very, like, I was like, give me, like, a little bit, because I'm, like, thinking. What's lovely about this little red book is that's the devotion book I was telling you about, and there are prayers in there. So I was able to read a couple of those prayers, just find one that fit. I also would pray Psalm 91 with them and Psalm 46. And I would just read that out of my Spanish Bible with them. And then a few people really wanted to do the Lord's Prayer and Apostles' Creed. So we did that as well. And I had been learning that in Spanish classes as well as the church churches that I had attended. Like I said, they love their coffee. So that was a way that we were able to start conversations with them. We would bring just containers of coffee. I think we went through like 50 of these things in the 3 weeks that we just kept refilling them, and that we were talking with them. This is our temporary location that we had set up. He was here early February. We had gotten approval for at least one other pastor for the 3 weeks after the regional team had left. Just because it's a lot of, I think, if I remember correctly, 150 contacts we had created from the refugios. So for one pastor and 2 deaconesses to do all of those things was a lot. And so we split up the work. I went with Pastor James, and Deaconess Crystal went with Pastor Warner, who is a pastor in Spain. And we divided and conquered and talked with the different families from the refugios. We had 2 families go through confirmation. We're having a third that we're still in talks with. One person was baptized in their front yard, which was cool. We just brought the baptismal font and everything to them because it was a girl who had developmental disabilities, and she was too scared to go to big gatherings. So we just brought the few of us there, and were able to do it in their house.
I got a question.
When you talk about approval, is that from the local government? You have to have approval to meet or whatever?
Yeah, so each of these refugios were regulated and controlled and ran by the National Guard. In order to get in, you had to have approval to get in. You can't just like waltz in and say, I'm going to do this here. So all the other churches did it right outside the doors, but we had the approval to go in. We just had to give them our name and where we lived and everything. But we were able to go into the refugio because of that and because of that connections. And at the one at the school, we had set it up to, I think we ended up doing 3 weeks of it by the time that they had dispersed everybody and found homes for them, of twice a week doing Vespers, because they had other, like they had a Catholic church as well come and do the other nights as well. And then the chaplain of the National Guard did a Sunday
So
service.
is the National Guard their National Guard or?
Yeah, it's Puerto Rico National Guard, although they did have other states, I don't remember which states, come and assist. It wasn't very many, I think it was like 1 or 2 that came and assisted, but it was their National Guard that, it was Puerto Ricans that were doing this and running the camps, and they worked alongside FEMA. This was something that we did at the start of the virus lockdowns. So in Puerto Rico, we have some of the strictest laws there. If you go outside without a mask on, you pay a $5,000 fine. So I just go with a mask everywhere. So we couldn't meet in person because our temporary location, if you saw, is very, very small. It's about the size, if you like the barrier there, of this room. That is our entire like sanctuary. We only have about 25 members at the moment, but 25 members packed that closely together, not a good idea. So we had to move a lot of our stuff online. And one of those things was a children's outreach. So that was what this was. We did a simple explanation of the faith, the Christian faith, and it was dealing with each of the 6 chief parts of the catechism. And we had a craft that dealt with it, a devotion that the pastor wrote, and a coloring page, which are these ones, which I drew and put together, and we printed and sent them out because we have the United States Postal Service, which is a great thing because having to do this in the Dominican Republic would have been very difficult to do because they don't have a mailing system that is reliable. So it was very helpful to be able to send them stuff. That's how we continued doing stuff. This specific one was called Encerrados con Jesus, which translates to locked in with Jesus. So we also had videos for them to watch to see how we talk about our faith based off of the catechism in the Bible. Any questions thus far? No? Okay. Like everyone else, we had to wear masks. This is Deaconess Crystal and myself. This is when we were able to start, some of the restrictions had been removed, and we had been approved by the city of Ponce, and I think it was the structural engineers, that we could be in our patio of our damaged properties. We couldn't go inside, but we could be in the patio. So we were able to start meeting in person again, having the safe distance, because we just set up chairs in the patio, which in the summer in the Caribbean is very, very warm. Luckily, we had like a 3 p.m. service, so most of the like patio is covered by the tree that was there under shade. But Pastor James had to stand in the sun, and I felt so bad for him every Sunday, just because I was sweating and I wasn't under a layer of pastoral garb. And then we did our VBS online. It's called Exploradores de la Creación. Anybody know what that can mean? Explorers of the creation. So we talked about creation and a few other Bible stories. It was a 3-day, 3-week event, so we had it every Tuesday. for 3 weeks in July. It was a big Zoom thing. We had a video that we produced. I can send Pastor Ford the YouTube address of it if you want to go and watch it. It was all shot on the iPhone. That's all I'm saying. It's a pretty good video. Like, I'm pretty proud of it and of our team. And this was us testing and making sure the Zoom worked. We had a puppet who joined us. His name is Carlos. He was a blast to have on. And then all of us each had a role. This is Pastor Anthony. He was like the lead scientist on our Exploradores stuff. And we had a craft that Yaritza, who works for CPTLN, which is Cristo para Todas las Naciones, which is the Spanish version of Lutheran Hour Ministries. So Christ for all the nations is what it stands for. But there is a CPTLN office in Puerto Rico. So we worked with her. They provided all of the stuff for the crafts, and we provided the rest. And it was a partnership between Iglesia Luterana Puerto Rico and CPTLN Puerto Rico, which is awesome that we're able to make those connections. This is one of our English classes. So another thing that happened during the virus lockdowns and things, beforehand we had been teaching English classes in Mayaguez, and I was set to start teaching them in Ponce, but that did not happen because we were set to open the week that everything shut down. So like, well, that's not happening anymore. How can we make this work with what we're doing now? So we partnered with actually the Office of International Mission, because a lot of people had planned to go on short-term teams throughout the year, and those were getting canceled. And so we worked with OIM and with those short-term team members, and we launched a pilot group of us doing one-on-one conversations in English. So we were able to, instead of only having like maybe 3 people per teacher, we were able to have 40 students because we had 40 volunteers that were able to Zoom in. We could put them in a Zoom room together. We're able as admins to pop in. So there's still that like respect and not super private ability that we had. And so it was safer. And we just started our second round 2 weeks ago of this one-on-one conversation with LCMS volunteers. And so this is just a screenshot of all of the people, students and teachers, as we start the class in a prayer all together, and we end the class in a prayer all together. And then in between, they usually, they have phonics, so it's like the long A, the long O, or the short O, and things like that. And then they have questions like, for example, our first lesson was on Jesus' birth. And so our question was, okay, where were you born? Where did you grow up? Things like that. And then they read the Bible story and then answered questions in English to the Bible story. And then depending on the time, at the end, there would be some short game that they could play that related to it. So for that one, I think it was, I'm going on a picnic and I'm bringing a balloon or something. You just go through the alphabet and think of something that you're bringing. So this is a lot of fun and a lot of work, but so fulfilling. And we have about 20 students that have stayed from the May classes till these classes. 2 of them go to churches, our churches. The rest are all people who found us through Facebook, ever interested in the classes, and so we've been able to have conversations with them that way.
Can they be any age, or how does that work?
So we have it capped right now at 18, but we're working on creating a program with an ESL teacher from the States who has experience with kids. And we're going to have it to where we're trying to figure out the logistics of it, because we don't want someone in a personal Zoom thing with a kid. So I think we're trying to figure out how, okay, we need the parent there and how that's exactly going to work. But we're talking about introducing Carlos into that as well, which will be fun. One other thing that we've been doing is every Friday we have art class online. And so this one, they were just painting a color wheel. And then it was just another way to reach people and get them to see our page and to see our services and other things. And then we would also pray with them if they asked us to pray with them. If any of you are interested, we are doing something in the month of October with painting rocks. I can send you the link. Each day you paint something new on a rock. And so October 1st was John 3:16 was a Bible verse. And so you just painted a world on a rock and you put John 3:16. And then you leave it somewhere for someone to find. And so that is an entire Latin America, Caribbean region thing that we are doing. And so those are some of the small things that we are doing to deal with what we're all dealing with right now. We can't do Zoom usually with our members because one of them has a cell phone and access to the internet. The rest do not. So a lot of what we've been doing with our members when we weren't able to connect with them was write a mailable letter to them, send them a transcript of the sermon, and stand good distance away and talk with them through a fence and stuff. What's helpful with that is I live a block away from one of the member families. So it made it very helpful. But does anybody have questions about anything?
You're teaching them English. So what is the importance of that?
So in order to, a lot of them learn English in like grade school because it's mandated by the federal government in the U.S. because Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. So they're technically, I don't want to say controlled because it's not the right word, but they're governed by the U.S. And so they have to learn English. But a lot of them don't actually practice it. And so they're very, like, it's like me learning Spanish and not being comfortable with it. But one story of the English class is actually, and one of the ones who stuck with us since May, because we also had 12 weeks of classes with just the three of us in small groups. The teachers, she came to us, she's like, she is a psychologist who works with the juvenile detention center system. And she's like, I was able to sit in a lecture from Yale in English and understand every single word of it. So I can better help the kids that I work with every day. And so it's things like that, like it helps them in their career. They're able to have access to more information. Because she's like, in May or March, I would not have been able to sit and listen to that and actually understand what was going on or how to better help my kids that I work with. So that's one of the important things. A good question. Other questions?
How did the VBS turn out? Did you get?
Yeah, we had about 40 kids. No, 40 families with 53 kids. Because there was some families with multiple kids in it. And we actually started that reminds me, thank you, another thing that's based off of it, still called Exploradores, but we took off the creation part, because we're going through, what's it in English? The Garden Stories for Little Kids, which is, I think it's LHM puts it out, Lutheran Hour Ministries puts it out. It's a story book, but it's the Bible stories. It's like creation, Noah's Ark, Moses, those type of things. So we're going through that right now with them. And once a month on Saturdays at 10 a.m., we have a little Zoom meeting with all of these lovely kiddos, and we get to talk with Carlos and talk about different things. I think they talked about camels last time because they talked about Noah's Ark. So they focused specifically on camels and like told like interesting facts about camels. There was one, and I don't remember what it exactly was, but it was like, wait, what? So it was something to do with water. If I remember what it was, I'll let y'all know. But we've been able to keep in contact with them, and there's some families that we're hoping we can build connections with in other cities that we don't have a church yet, and possibly either have an ability to go and pick them up for church and bring them to our church when we're able to do that, or the possibility of starting like a smaller church plant in that city, depending on how many people we get and whether it make more sense for us to go to them or them to come to us. But good question.
Would you consider the nation in poverty?
Parts of it, yes. A lot of them are on government assistance, just because it's really hard to break out of it, and because of an amount of natural disasters that have hit Puerto Rico in the last 4 years. And right before Maria, they actually had a financial collapse of the system in Puerto Rico. Then Maria happened, which decimated most of the island, and they're rebuilding it, but it's taking a while. And a lot of people have since from Maria moved to the mainland, so moved here to the States. And so a lot of the people who are left there are the elderly, or those who don't have the ability to work as much anymore, or didn't have the money already to begin with to fly to Florida or one of the states that are closer, or New York. So most people either go to Florida or New York from Puerto Rico, because that's where large countries are, and it feels more like home. And then with the earthquakes, a lot of them are still struggling. We see a lot of depression and anxiety and PTSD from that as well.
So if you're young and healthy, can you find a job and make money?
Yep. I know electricians, I think they make $50 an hour, because there's not very many of them. And that's the starting rate, if you don't have experience at all. And so but you have to, the thing with all of those ones is you have to be a resident of Puerto Rico to even get a license to do it. And so if you're able to find something, you're able to find something. But there's a lot of people that we work with who don't even have a high school education. And so trying to find that type of work is very difficult for them.
So you say they're rebuilding, but who's doing that rebuilding? Is it the people local, or the people coming from?
It's a little bit of both. So FEMA did some of that. Most of that work is done. They put roofs back on the stuff. Our churches have done a little bit more a few years ago than we are now. A lot of what we do now is more conversations. We have been working with families to provide stoves that got under water, or got things landed on them from the earthquakes. Because one thing I also forgot to mention is Tropical Storm Isaias hit Puerto Rico in July, and it caused flash flooding in Mayaguez, which is one of our cities. One of our team members actually had a river going through his house from the amount of water, and we also had church members who had rivers going through their houses. So it was a lot of muddy cleanup. Never thought I would be taking a shovel to mud and throwing it in a garbage can, but I've done that. But it was a little bit of both that it's kind of doing it. But right now it's to the point where, okay, do we keep rebuilding it, or do we just do something else? It's kind of their mentality now. So a lot of the families' homes are just there.
Right, why rebuild when it's just gonna fall down again?
Because things can happen.
Yeah.
Mostly cities,
Um,
farming.
So where I'm at is the second largest city. And then there's a few smaller like suburb cities, but there's actually a lot more farming if you go to the west, I think. I'm getting the directions correct. But there's a lot more farming, and there's a lot of people who still live up in the mountains, which is very hard to get to. Like not super safe in a car if you've never driven in mountains. And so you have to maneuver around a lot of downed trees because the government just never got to cleaning it up because no one really ever uses it unless you live there, and they just deal with it. And that's how they go about their life. They move things around a little bit, but there's down trees and stuff, and you just continue going with it.
So how big is the city you're in?
I don't remember the exact number. I think it was 200,000, maybe 300. I don't remember off the top of my head.
So people aren't starving to have clean water now.
You can shower in the water. It's not safe to drink, so we have to buy all of our water bottle. So seeing people take water out of the faucet here is real trippy for me. I'm like, don't do that. And then I remember I am here and I can drink out of the faucet and be safe. Yeah, so not super safe, at least in Ponce. Mike was, you can drink the water as long as you have a filter on the faucet, just fine. But there was some damage when the earthquakes happened in the Ponce area, that it's not safe. There's some things that shook into it. I don't know the exact extent of it. And the electrical systems, there's one plant on the entire island that is running things because the other one got destroyed in the earthquakes that happened in January. And now one plant that is running everything is basically being held together by duct tape. So we were praying that they can fix one of the other ones so they can fix the other one. It's just a cycle of needing things to be fixed.
Is the storm season over then?
No.
Is that ever?
Not really. But the official hurricane storm season ends in November. But we've already had the most active hurricane season on record in the Caribbean. At one time, there was 5 storms that were brewing in the Atlantic. One of them was supposed to head for Puerto Rico like 2 weeks ago, which would not have caused me to allow it to come back, but it took a turn and went into the ocean.
Praise God.
Yes, and we were all thankful for that, because then I could come back here and it didn't hit the island, which is, they don't need a hurricane on top of everything else they're dealing with. But we're still not out of the woods yet with the hurricanes and tropical storms. Luckily, we've just had the one tropical storm, Isaias, that did damage. We were supposed to get, which one would that have been? One of the other ones after Isaias was supposed to do a direct hit and cause a lot of damage, but it just skirted around the island and just caused wind. So we praise God for that as well, that it didn't actually hit us head on like they were predicting it would. Because that would have caused even more damage on top of the system that can barely handle what's happening now.
They must be used to these hurricanes because they're out there in the ocean and get them all the time, right?
They're used to them, but they're also, after Maria, they're still on edge that there's going to be another Maria. And that's what scares people, is the fact that there could be another Maria. And so whenever they announce something that's higher than a tropical storm depression 1, I think is what it's called, people go to Walmart and get, like, I saw some guy have 50 cans of beans in his cart. They stock up on stuff and then take it home and pray that it doesn't end up being like Maria. But you don't know. Like, we have emergency action plans in place for our team of, okay, what happens if we lose power and we lose cell service and we're not able to contact anybody? So where are we meeting? Okay, now what happens if that meeting place is underwater and we can't meet there? So I'm in the city with 2 other missionaries, James and Crystal, Pastor James and Deaconess Crystal. And so what happens is I go to their house when we have a bigger tropical storm. And so I just go there and we're together, and then they get usually 1 to 2 families together. And so that way on the Mayac West side, so there's 3 families there. And that way we're together, at least in the cities we're in. And then if something would happen, then we're able to be together as a team, gauge, okay, do we need to go meet with our team first, or do we do something in Ponce first and like provide immediate relief? And we have stuff set up at our card houses to do that as well.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I'm sure we could do more questions, but we are 5 minutes to service. So let us thank Stephanie for coming and sharing with us the mission she has been a part of, and we too have been a part of by supporting her. So let's give her a round of applause.
Good luck.
Pastor, you did, you got the revised.
Yep, it is.
The other one was not in the right.
I appreciate that. Would have been a repeat of, what was it, last week or the week before, where I had the wrong.
Right, no, this, but anyway, you got the, we got it. So that's all that.